Hi, my name is Rinki Sethi. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at BILL, where I lead both the security and the IT teams. I think some of the toughest challenges that CISOs are facing today is there's a heightened regulatory scrutiny on cybersecurity. There's so much awareness around it, and we're living in kind of a time that there's more scrutiny on security spend as well, and you see a lot of companies that are having to prioritize the risks that they're tackling while living with more constraints. And so you're now kind of figuring out, what do we prioritize? How do I spend my budget in the right ways to make sure that we've got coverage on the security risks at the company? And I think that a cyber management platform could really help CISOs navigate this complexity and figure out where should we be spending our dollar to get the best bang for the buck in terms of driving risk down. I think it's incredibly important to have ways to measure your cybersecurity program. Unfortunately, there really isn't standardization across the industry, and you'll hear CISOs talk about how I'm just using my own ways to go and measure my program and present to the board, and thinking about the metrics and data that matter the most. And I think there's really room for standardization and just a way to measure our programs and bubble up the right metrics and just standardization across the industry. I think there's a lot of things you could measure as a part of a cybersecurity program. I think we as cybersecurity professionals, we have so many tools and so much data in our environment. And today there's certain things we present on, like incidents and how well our tools are working. We also talk about key risks in our portfolio at our companies. And so I think these are some of we have all the tools, we have all the data, making sense of that data and then presenting it back into the metrics that the CISO should care about the most, I think is the most important thing. And we have, just starting from a risk perspective on what are the top risks that we should be presenting on, what are the key areas and vulnerabilities that we should be looking at, and what is our vulnerability management performance over time, and are we meeting SLAs? A lot of the things that we as security executives talk about all the time, data exists. I think it's a lot about how we're presenting it and having some standardization and also some automation around this, so it's not such a manual effort in trying to get this, especially every time we're presenting at board meetings or every time we're presenting to executives on what their risk posture might be like. We have to go and pull this data, and so I think really automation around getting this information in a simpler way is where I think the magic is and what we need to see. One of the things, having reported now to so many boards, every board is made up of different types of folks, and every board has a different level of understanding. Even within a board, the individuals may have different understanding around security. And so I think it's really important to baseline what is the understanding around security, what you think is important to share back to the board members, but also what do they want to see. And I think a lot of this has to come with here's kind of what we're going to share as a baseline in terms of metrics every quarter, what you should expect from me, why it's important. But then also, I think a lot of it is around transparency and making sure that you're sharing some of the stories, some of the incidents, what you've learned from that, how you're making your program better, whether it's improvements to products and tools that you might have, or process, or things that you're doing around training. But I think it's really important for the board to understand what are the key risks you're tracking, having a set of metrics that you consistently share with the board that are meaningful, and then kind of pairing that with some of the stories around how you're improving your security program through some of the incidents that you may have seen. I think it's been really interesting seeing the regulatory environment kind of change and kind of the scrutiny around cybersecurity programs. In some ways, it's actually really good because there's so much awareness around cybersecurity now. I think back to about 20 years ago when I started my career, where nobody knew what cybersecurity was, nobody cared about it really, nobody wanted to talk about it. There was absolutely no board visibility around this stuff. And fast forward now, everyone knows about it in the company, and it's in the news every single day, and folks are talking about cybersecurity. And now this regulatory scrutiny in some degree helps because it's not us championing from the ground as security practitioners that there's a need for cybersecurity or this is important. But on the flip side too, now there's a lot more pressure on security teams and executives, not just around it's around your reporting requirements, it's around making sure that you have the right data bubbling up at the right time to your board, to your executives, to ensure that you can take action at the right time. So I think the regulatory landscape is changing quite a bit, and I think over the next decade we'll see it change even more so. It's really interesting when you look at the security landscape right now. There's so much innovation happening, which is actually really exciting to see as a CISO. And sometimes when we talk to our teams, and especially our technical teams, they love playing around with some of the new innovators. And so all of a sudden you end up with a lot of security products, and you're looking back at, am I reducing risk? Are we learning something new in terms of how we might be changing our program in the future? And then I think you get to a point where you start looking at everything you have in your environment and you're like, are we reducing risk and are we spending our money in the best way possible? And to be honest, there really aren't good ways to go and look at that. And when you look at other industries, like whether it's IT or engineering, there's products that have emerged, right? That now look at kind of effectiveness of your products. Are you leveraging them to the best possible? How can you reduce costs or how can you gain efficiencies? And I think it's a ripe area for disruption in cyber to provide CISOs with a way to go and make sure that you're running your program most effectively. And are you getting the best ROI from the tools and the ways that you've implemented the innovations that you have in place? I'd just love something like a chat GPT that I can go to say, like, what should I be worried about today? What should I be looking at today? What do I need to focus my time on from a risk perspective? I think that would be a game changer. Or even something that says, here's kind of the news for the day. Here's the things you should be worried about. Here's what your program is looking at. And so I know how to prioritize my time then as it works within the company. So I feel like we need a CISO assistant of some sort that helps us kind of with here's what you need to know for the day and here's how you should go spend your time. One of the things that I think is, we talked a lot about the need for standardization around metrics and just automation on how we're bringing data to a CISO. Every quarter it's a manual pull from my team, and it's like everybody's sitting there and, oh my gosh, here we're going to spend 6 weeks trying to gather data and get it for a board meeting. And I think Onyxia's platform is something that CISOs need, and it's going to disrupt and hopefully help standardize what CISOs are doing for boards. Sivan and I have talked about this many times, that if we get Onyxia right, hopefully it'll become the new standard that you have to have, so that everybody's like, oh, I pulled the data from Onyxia to present it to the board, and that's what board members and executives will start expecting.